Welcome to Shadow of Truth, the case that exposed a husband's darkest secret, true crime breakdown, shadows in the driveway. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story is about to take you deep into a crime so cold, so methodically hidden, it shocked even the investigators who thought they'd seen everything. It was just after 10:30 p.m. when Coleman County Dispatch received a call that would change everything. The man on the line spoke calmly, too calmly. "My wife's been shot," he said. "She's in the van. I need someone here now." Deputies arrived minutes later to find a quiet Alabama neighborhood swallowed in blue police lights and damp night air. The caller, 37-year-old Jason Crawford, stood at the end of his driveway, barefoot, staring blankly toward the family's silver van. His expression was distant, not the look of a man who'd just lost the mother of his children, but of someone who'd already accepted what they were about to find. Inside the van sat Tiffany Crawford, slumped over the steering wheel. 2 gunshot wounds, one to the chin, one to the temple. A small handgun rested loosely in her left hand. But even in the blur of panic and flashing lights, something about the scene felt off. Deputy Mallory Jenkins leaned in to check for a pulse. "Where's the gun from?" she asked. Jason didn't hesitate. "It's hers," he said. "She keeps it in the door." His voice didn't shake. His eyes didn't move. When paramedics arrived, they worked quickly, pulling open the van door, their radios crackling in the still night. But within minutes, the lead medic called it. Tiffany was gone. Jason sat on the gravel driveway, face in his hands, whispering something no one could make out. The deputies exchanged uneasy glances. His hands were clean, no tears, no trembling, no desperation, just silence. Detective Joe Parrish, called in from the county bureau, started his assessment immediately. The gun was in Tiffany's left hand, yet every record showed she was right-handed. And 2 shots? In almost every self-inflicted shooting, there's only one. The deputies knew it. Parrish knew it. Even Jason had to know it. But before they could question him further, Jason's mother, Rhonda, a longtime county records supervisor, arrived. She wrapped her son in a hug and whispered something to him. Within minutes, Jason was escorted to sit in a patrol car, not as a suspect, but as a grieving husband. The following morning, while detectives gathered evidence, Jason was already giving interviews to neighbors. He said Tiffany had been struggling, that she'd been drinking heavily, that she'd told him she couldn't take it anymore. To outsiders, it sounded tragic. To investigators, it sounded rehearsed. When Detective Parrish tried to examine the van again 2 days later, he was stunned. The vehicle had been washed, spotless inside and out. Jason said he did it because he didn't want the kids to see what happened. The sheriff's office had apparently given him permission. That permission would haunt the department for years. Still, the whispers began. Friends who knew Tiffany described her as joyful, devoted, and deeply compassionate. She ran an online group called Mothers Helping Mothers and spent weekends volunteering. She had just started seeing a counselor quietly to talk about stress at home. She'd never shown signs of despair. When investigators searched the family's home, they found Tiffany's laptop still logged in. Her recent messages revealed tension, arguments over finances, long silences, and hints that Jason had been controlling. One message stood out. "I just want peace again. I'm tired of pretending everything is fine." As Parrish scrolled further, he found something else. A message to another man, time-stamped the night before she died. It wasn't romantic, but it was honest. She'd written, "He's angrier lately. I don't feel safe when he's like this." That single message flipped the tone of the case. This wasn't just a domestic dispute gone wrong. It was the unraveling of something much darker. When detectives questioned Jason again, his version began to shift. At first, he claimed Tiffany shot herself while he was inside. Later, he said he heard 2 shots after she told him she loved him. But when pressed, his details blurred. He couldn't remember whether he turned back immediately or after a few seconds. He couldn't remember which side of the van the door was on. Forensic technicians started to piece together the scene. The bullet angles, the residue patterns, the lack of spatter on the door. None of it matched Jason's version. Still, there was no physical proof tying him to the trigger, not yet. Late that night, as Detective Parrish went over the evidence board, Tiffany's smiling family photos pinned beside the grim crime scene shots, one question lingered: why 2 shots? A self-inflicted gunshot almost always leaves no time for another. He stared at the photo of the van, at the left hand clutching the weapon, at the husband's blank expression in the background. Something about it gnawed at him. The official line would still call it undetermined, but every investigator in the room felt the same chill. And then, a week later, a piece of digital evidence surfaced that changed everything. Tiffany's counselor called Detective Parrish. She had something she thought he needed to hear. What she revealed would rip open the Crawford family's perfect facade and expose a secret Jason thought he'd buried forever. Secrets beneath the surface. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what detectives uncovered next turned this quiet Alabama tragedy into one of the most shocking small-town murder cases in years. When Detective Joe Parrish met Tiffany's counselor, Lori Bennett, he wasn't expecting much, maybe confirmation that Tiffany had been stressed or drinking. But what she handed him changed the entire trajectory of the investigation. A stack of session notes, neatly clipped together. Tiffany's handwriting filled the margins. Jason's temper, the silence after fights, the fear of saying the wrong thing. One line stopped Parrish cold, dated just 2 days before her death. He told me if I ever left, he'd make sure no one could have me. The detective felt a chill. He asked Lori if Tiffany had ever mentioned being suicidal. She shook her head immediately. No, she was frustrated, not hopeless. She talked about getting her own place. She was planning a future without him. It was the missing piece that finally made sense of everything. Parrish thanked her and left, gripping the file so tightly his knuckles went white. The moment he got back to his office, he pinned a new note to the evidence board. Motive, control, possession, jealousy. Over the next few days, Parrish dug deeper into Jason's life. On the surface, Jason Crawford was the image of stability. Small business owner, father of 3, and husband of a well-loved community leader. But behind that mask, there were cracks no one had noticed. Records showed that Jason's first marriage had ended abruptly after infidelity claims. He'd told friends he could never trust women again. He once said in a text to a friend, "If someone betrays me, I'll destroy everything before I let them win." The detective's instincts were screaming. Tiffany's death wasn't about depression, it was about revenge. Parrish requested. Jason's phone records and discovered that hours before Tiffany's death, he had accessed her laptop. Forensic analysts confirmed it. He'd gone through her email, her social accounts, even her private messages to the counselor. One conversation stood out, a thread with a man named Eric, someone Tiffany had met months earlier through her community group. Their messages weren't romantic, just 2 people venting about life, kids, and dreams of change. But to Jason, they were proof of betrayal. At 10:22 p.m., Tiffany texted Eric, "He's angry. I'm staying in the van until he calms down." It was her last message. Detectives brought Jason back in for another interview. This time, the room was colder, quieter. Parrish leaned forward, resting the counselor's notes on the table. "She told her therapist you threatened her," he said softly. Jason didn't flinch. He just exhaled and looked at the wall. "I never touched her," he said. "I loved her. She just pushed me too far sometimes." Parrish noted the past tense, loved. His tone wasn't grief, it was frustration. Then Jason added something that made the detective's pulse quicken. "I just wish she hadn't made me so angry that night." The silence in the room grew unbearable. Parrish stared at him, searching for any sign of remorse. There was none, only exhaustion, and maybe a hint of relief that he'd finally said it aloud. After the interview, Parrish ordered a full forensic reanalysis of the gun. It was Tiffany's, a small revolver she kept in her car door, but the fingerprints told a different story. Her prints were faint, partial. The majority were Jason's. At the same time, the lab returned results on the residue found inside the van. The pattern on Tiffany's clothes didn't match a self-inflicted shot. The distance and angle showed the gun was fired from outside, not inside. Now the pieces fit perfectly. Tiffany hadn't ended her life. She'd been trapped in that van, cornered, terrified, and silenced. As detectives built their case, Tiffany's friends rallied around her memory. Candlelight vigils were held at the park she loved, and her group, Mothers Helping Mothers, became a refuge for others in difficult marriages. But behind the candles and sympathy, rumors swirled that Jason was walking free, untouched, because of his mother's ties to law enforcement. For Parrish, the pressure was mounting. Without a confession or a direct eyewitness, it was still circumstantial. But he refused to let it die in paperwork. He needed something irrefutable. That's when a neighbor came forward. She'd been walking her dog the night Tiffany died. Around the same time the gunshots were heard. She told detectives she saw Jason outside the van, pacing. She heard him yell something she couldn't make out, then the first shot. The second came seconds later. Her statement was the break they needed. Parrish moved swiftly, obtaining a warrant to seize Jason's clothing from that night. When they found the shirt, it had been washed. But luminol testing revealed faint traces of blood on the cuff and sleeve. Now the case was tightening like a noose. Jason knew it too. He stopped answering calls from the department. Friends said he looked pale, jumpy, and paranoid. He told one coworker, "They're twisting everything. I didn't mean for it to happen that way." The next morning, Parrish filed a motion for arrest, but before they could bring Jason in, he vanished. His truck was gone, his phone left behind on the kitchen counter. Inside his wallet, police found a folded note. 4 words were scrawled across it in messy handwriting, words that chilled the entire investigative team. "You'll never prove it. The cold confession." Jason Crawford's disappearance sent Coleman County into chaos. For days, officers combed highways, back roads, and motels, looking for any sign of him. His abandoned truck was found 2 counties over, parked beneath a faded billboard off Route 78. The driver's door was unlocked, and on the passenger seat was a half-empty bottle of whiskey and a folded newspaper covering a photo of Tiffany's vigil. Detective Joe Parrish stood by the roadside as the sun sank into the horizon. The wind carried the distant hum of traffic, and for a brief moment, he wondered if Jason had ended it himself. But inside the glove box, tucked under a registration slip, officers found something more chilling than a farewell note. A printed copy of Tiffany's counselor records, annotated with Jason's handwriting. Across the top, he'd scrawled, "She ruined everything." 3 days later, a call came in from Birmingham. A man matching Jason's description had walked into a small diner at dawn, ordered coffee, and asked to use the phone. When police arrived minutes later, he didn't resist. He simply said, "I'm done running." Back at the Coleman County Detention Center, Jason looked almost peaceful as he sat in the interrogation room. His hands were folded neatly on the table, his posture calm. Detective Parrish entered quietly, placed a file on the table, and stared at him for a long moment. "You've had a week to think," Parrish said. "Ready to tell me what really happened?" Jason didn't answer at first. He looked up at the ceiling, his jaw tightening. Then, without emotion, he said, "It wasn't supposed to go that way." He explained that on the night Tiffany died, he had confronted her about the messages with Eric. She'd denied it, called him paranoid. The argument escalated outside, yelling, accusations, tears. According to Jason, Tiffany told him she was leaving for good, that she was done being afraid of him. That's when he snapped. "She was sitting in the van," he said softly. "I grabbed the gun from the door. She screamed. I didn't mean to. It just went off." He paused, exhaling sharply. "After the first shot, she tried to get out. I panicked." Parrish's pen stopped moving. "So, you shot her again?" Jason nodded slowly. "I thought if I made it look like suicide, maybe no one would hate me for it." The room went silent. The faint buzz of the fluorescent light filled the air, punctuated only by Jason's shallow breathing. It wasn't the tearful confession Parrish expected. It was detached, almost methodical, as if he were describing someone else's actions. Jason signed the statement without hesitation. There was no fight left in him. For Parrish, it was the end of a long, relentless pursuit for truth. But for Tiffany's family, it was the beginning of another kind of pain. When news of Jason's confession reached the public, the town was split. Some couldn't believe it. The charming church-going father who coached kids baseball, a murderer? Others said they had always sensed something beneath his calm exterior. He smiled too easily, one neighbor recalled, like he was pretending to be someone he wasn't. Months later, the courtroom was packed for the trial. Jason sat expressionless at the defense table, dressed neatly in a suit. The prosecution presented the evidence. Forensic reports, digital records, and the chilling 911 call. They played it in full, the room frozen as Jason's voice echoed through the speakers. "My wife's been shot. Who shot her?" A pause, then his voice again, flat, emotionless. "I don't know." Tiffany's mother broke down in tears as the audio ended. Jason stared straight ahead. The jury didn't take long. After 2 hours, they returned with a verdict. Guilty of murder in the first degree. When the judge skied if he had anything to say before sentencing, Jason stood, cleared his throat, and said, "I wish I could take it back. But you'll never understand why I did it. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 15. As he was led out in handcuffs, his expression didn't change. No tears, no emotion, just the same hollow look he'd worn the night Tiffany died. Outside the courthouse, Tiffany's friends gathered in a circle, holding candles in the fading light. Her mother, Cheryl, spoke softly to a reporter. "He thought he could erase her story," she said, "but the truth always finds a way to speak." Detective Parrish watched from across the street, the glow of the candles reflecting in his eyes. He'd solved the case, but there was no satisfaction in it, only the heavy knowledge of how fragile love can become when it turns into possession. In the years that followed, the bench at Sportsman Lake Park, the one painted Tiffany's favorite color, purple, became a quiet memorial. Mothers from all over came to sit, talk, and remember her strength. The inscription on the plaque read simply, "For those who choose kindness, even when the world isn't kind back." As for Jason Crawford, he remains behind bars at Kilby Correctional Facility. He's never appealed again, never spoken to the media, never shown remorse. But once a year, on the anniversary of Tiffany's death, an anonymous letter arrives at the Coleman County Sheriff's Office. The handwriting is careful, almost delicate. It always contains the same 6 words. "I wish I hadn't pulled the trigger." If you thought this story was chilling, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe, because the next case will make you question everything you thought you knew about guilt, love, and the darkness people hide behind closed doors.